Can Bitcoin go any higher? Can it get to the $1 million mark? My name is Bill and I'm from The Savvy. As always, guys, we want you guys to stay safe, so seek your own truth, find your own knowledge, and then ultimately take your own action. We are not financial gurus or experts, so be responsible with your money. All right, with that being said, where can Bitcoin go, right? Whether you're a skeptic, whether you're a holder, a believer, or an investor, you have to appreciate the present in which we're at right now. Remember, almost a year ago, Bitcoin was under $4,000. Today, it's roughly 28 to 30 times the market price of gold. Now, remember gold, because I'm actually going to come back to that. But I want to give this as a full perspective. So I'm going to start with going backwards, and then I'm going to work my way to the actual prediction to the future. Where did Bitcoin come from? Right? If you don't know this, most of you probably understand this paper, this 9-page document that created this multi-trillion-dollar industry with innovation and new technologies disrupting the world forever. This 9-page document, and it's on bitcoin.org. You can see it right here. This comes from this individual who I like to call the Kaiser Soze of the crypto world, Satoshi Nakamoto. Now, we don't know if this is an individual or a group of individuals, but regardless, I tend to believe that this individual is Rick Asteria, just trying to rickroll the entire world. At some point, he's gonna flip the switch. Gotta make you understand, never gonna give you up. But regardless, where is this going, right? Where is Bitcoin heading? Well, first we gotta understand that yes, this started back in 2009 is when the first Bitcoins were released, but this document actually was released in 2008. And prior to this, there was actually several cryptocurrencies that attempted to do the same thing that Nakamoto started with Bitcoin. And because of those pioneers, that's kind of what led to the success of Bitcoin. So I want to acknowledge them and appreciate them. And at the same time, I want to go back even further, back to 1991. There's a document that was created called How to Timestamp a Digital Document from two individuals, Stoudemire, Harbor. They come from Bellcore. Bellcore is a division of Bell Labs. Now that's in New Jersey, which, don't hold it against them. But ultimately, what was the case here for these two individuals? What were they getting after? Well, you don't have to go too far because this is a 13-page document. But in the first paragraph, it kind of lays out the fundamentals of blockchain. It talks about timestamping on 3 or 4 different formats. The first one being text, the second one being picture, the other one being audio, and my favorite part, video documents. Now, for those of you, if you were around in 91, then you know what this sound is. And what that means is you have to appreciate the insight of video document. This is way before YouTube. Video at that time was just kind of non-existent. It was something to you couldn't even imagine it because it would usually take you a half an hour to download a very simple photo. So the fact that these two individuals had the insight to add video documents is pretty amazing. But anyway, you should go check that out if you want to. I want to fast forward a little bit and get to, the meat of this, right? How we get a piece of this Bitcoin pie. But speaking of pies, did you know that Pizza Hut was the first, or one of the first companies to ever accept an online order? Well, then it probably shouldn't surprise you that Papa John's was the first company to accept Bitcoin. And as a matter of fact, the first 2 pizzas that were bought were for 10,000 Bitcoins. Now, this is the time and the moment for all of you, if you want to enter any cliche that you're looking for when related to pizza and money. That's a lot of dough. That's a lot of cheddar. I heard pizza places is where they make all the dough. Whatever you want to do. Go crazy. But again, this is kind of the proof, right? That was the first step in understanding how Bitcoin becomes a currency. Someone is willing to accept that currency in order for a good. That's pretty awesome. So that was kind of the first step in that direction. But I want to talk about why Nakamoto felt the need to get to this point. Why did we need an evolution? This will help you understand blockchain a little bit better if you don't already, which is 2 pieces, a ledger and verification. I want to talk about trust and integrity, and then we're going to talk about the price of Bitcoin because this is very related. The ledger itself needs to be a public ledger. See, back in the day, you would go into a bank, let's just say many decades ago, you would go to a bank and you'd basically write yourself a check. You'd have to physically go into the bank, write yourself a check. Or you'd fill out withdrawal slip, which just sounds crazy. You'd get that cash, and let's say it's a Friday, you decide to go to the bar and blow it all. Guess what? On Saturday, you got no cash. You have to wait until the bank is open. Now, we evolved from that into, having a tab at your local grocery store or local watering hole. And then from there, getting lines of credit. And from there, online banking, PayPal, Venmo. And in the midst of that, in the middle of it, really was, Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin does two things, like I mentioned. The first is having an open ledger. And the second one being verification, decentralized verification through a network of computers. Now, it gets more complicated than that, but I just wanted to break that down to lead to my last point of the future of Bitcoin. As this is all coming together, as more interest is coming up, innovation, technology, everything's pulling together, a lot of energy is built around this. We're seeing more institutional investors, we're seeing more wealthy investors, and we talked about this. The thing that I want to add to that is understanding the resource side of this. Michael Saylor, if you haven't checked him out, just go through our channel. We have almost every word he's ever said. It should be called the Michael Saylor channel at this point. But he talks in a piece, he talks about, does the US, where do they want to play in this space? Russia, China, the other countries, where do they want to play in this space? As Bitcoin becomes a massive resource, what are they going to want to do? Well, let's just look at gold. Gold is an $8 trillion right now economy. Its market cap is $8 trillion, right? We don't know how much gold is left on the planet, but in terms of who owns it, let's just say it's $8 trillion. And out of that, where do you think the US stacks up there? Well, they're not last at the table. They're in the top three. The same with Russia and China and various other countries. Now the question becomes, when are they going to get involved with Bitcoin? Because when that happens, you're going to see the price of Bitcoin rise. That compiled with investors, wealthy investors, and institutional investors, you're talking about deep pockets with a lot of money raising the price of Bitcoin. So for me personally, where do I see the price of Bitcoin? I think it could get to a $2 trillion market cap, possibly a 2.5 before the end of the year. What that means to me is it's close to a little over 100,000, at least by Q1 of 2022, maybe 125,000. That's my prediction. Is there going to be a range there? Of course there is. Will it drop? Will it go a little bit higher? But that's my prediction as of right now. And as always, go out and seek your own truth. Go out and find your knowledge and ultimately take the appropriate action, right? It's your responsibility to do what you want with your money in terms of investing. All right, guys, remember, stay savvy. And as always, like and subscribe to the channel. If you do, it supports us and we'll build more great content like this. We'll get more resources. Down below, we'll have links. We have a ton of other videos that are related to wallets and where you could start with crypto if you're just getting involved. And as always, have a great day.